Alex Lafkus here. I want to talk to you today a little bit about the hex hatch. Bugs are starting to pop in a few locations. We are sitting at June 15th, which there's usually bugs around by now, especially if you got to move around a little bit to find them, but you're going to find them. Obviously, start south. The swamp on the PM is one of the first of the premier trout streams to have some fish. So that's between like Walhalla and Indian Bridge. So that's one of the first to go. Also down below Alcona Dam, so it's the backwaters off Loud Pond that'll hatch on the lower Asable, and those are usually going. I haven't heard. I'm sure they're down there though by now. Usually about when drakes are wrapping up upriver, you got them down there. That's kind of the timing. Um, first week of June, first 10 days typically. So they're probably down there now. Um, Hex is an interesting bug. It's a black mud burrowing nymph. So you need that blackish mud. So that's why you end up having, really good hatches in areas like Connors Flat, Magdaparma Lee, the swamp down there, all the backwaters from every pond on the Asables, because that's the substrate you need to have them. Also, all the lakes that have rivers flowing in. It doesn't necessarily take an impoundment on a trout stream, but about every warm body of water we have will get them to some degree. And so fish really key in on them. It doesn't matter if, I've been catching smallmouth lately that are up eating hex. Seen some steelhead eating them too. Haven't got a hook in one yet. Um, Whatever. So I mean, it's a very important food source for everything. Their larval stage or the wiggler is a big time ice fishing bait. It's very important to perch. I mean, this is a huge deal, and it's a major biomass in all of our lakes that really help a lot of our fish grow all year. Um, so what you're looking at with hex is usually they take 48 to 72 hours to molt. So as far as the brown drakes that are like, 12 to 24, quick turnaround, these are going to be a little longer. So if you're out there fishing or you see a bunch of shucks on a lake, say on a Sunday morning, there's a bunch of shucks. So those flies would have hatched like a Saturday night. If you have the right conditions, you're kind of looking at, okay, so Sunday, Monday, maybe Tuesday night, Wednesday night, you're going to have bugs. Your spinner should come out. It's the molting time frame varies based on warmth, heat basically, and the right conditions to spin and mate and die. So 48 to 72 hours. Hatchers usually come later at night than the spinner fall. The spinner fall is usually right at dark and not brown drake dark 9:30, 10, like 10:30. I kind of used to have a rule of thumb when I was guiding hex a lot that if you didn't have a fish up with bugs on the water at 10:30 to give it 15 more minutes, and by 10:45 you should have fish up. And basically that's when it's really dark outside. So a lot of them bigger fish will kind of wait. But it's 10:45, 10:30, 10:45. It's late. That's when those fish are really going to get going on them. Seems like. You obviously find your random stuff that happens here or there. Some of the other rivers, if you don't have a main basin where those hex pour out of, or you're not adjacent to it when you're hex fishing, the lower south gets it thick too. The lower Asable above Connors, like there's some of that. But like if I were to think back to like the Mayo section, it's maybe a 15-minute event if you see any flies. It's really short-lived in the majority of that Mayo to McKinley section, or even the upper Manistee can be an hour ordeal. You don't have a main basin that just pumps bugs after bug after bug after bug. So it varies depending on where you are. Two ways to look at it. One, it's less consistent, but fish are usually more willing to eat it. The closer you get to those main basins where they have a ton of flies, the trickier those fish can get. Because after night one, they're choked full of them. Everybody's like, well, they've all been hooked. They've all been caught. A lot of it is they don't have that desire to feed anymore because they're already fed. So they're a little smarter, a little more educated. Like they just don't do reckless things to get caught. That's what makes it tricky. And especially if you get into some of those really thick basins that get a ton of flies. I've seen it where, you have a shot the first 15 to 20 minutes, and then you get just rafts of flies. I mean, HEX pouring down that river so thick they'll never find your fly. And frankly, you got to wait till about 3 a.m. or whenever the bugs thin out. I've seen it be as late as 3 a.m. before you're starting to get opportunity at fish because the bugs have thinned out enough that you have a chance. One way to kind of combat it, especially early in that process, in the first 15 to 30 minutes of that hatch, is to supersize your fly and hope they just are that reckless and stupid that they choke on it. So you'll see that behavior change in those fish throughout the hatch. The first few nights are always the best, but that usually involves multiple nights of sitting with nothing until you get the event, you get your fish. And it might not be the first night, it might be the second night. Sometimes that first night they're not really on them good, but that second night of decent flies, it seems like brings a few more fish out. And once they're out, it's pretty reckless for a while, and then it'll kind of taper. They'll get smarter, so that's when everybody says chase the hatch. That's what they're talking about. Being on first bugs in this spot, then first bugs in that spot, then early bugs in this spot, and then maybe you jump back to somewhere else after a lull to get back in on them again. It just varies. It's based on how you want to do it. And the other thing you got to watch is water temp. Some of those bigger basins, you start getting warm water and the fish just don't respond. Metabolism slows down and they go into survival mode. So I typically see it at 68 degrees. A lot of people talk about, 70-degree pledge. Well, whatever. You're going to fish, you're going to fish. But it seems like at 68 degrees, those fish go into, survival mode, and they won't be as aggressive. When you do happen to find one that's feeding aggressive, it's usually right next to a spring, which can be hard on a fish, because if you catch them in that water, fight them out into 70, 72-degree water, then they just can't recover, and lactic acid builds up, and they will die. Whatever, fish die. You don't want to hurt any, don't go fishing. I mean, that's kind of the fact with all of this stuff. Any type of fishing, fish are going to die. If you're that concerned about them, go sit on a spot, guard it so nobody fishes it, and let them just feed freely. I mean, that's the deal. So your spinners are going to come early, then your hatchers come late. As far as pattern, I've always seen that it's, I've got what I like, but it's really about getting the drift. I run heavy tippet. Man, I can probably count on one hand the number of times I went under 2X. A lot of 1X, a lot of 0X. I mean, when I started, it was 10-pound Maxima, 8-pound Maxima, which is cable. 8-pound Maxima chameleon, you can drag a steelhead upstream with. So, Rusty always used to say, if it fits through the eye, fish it. Didn't matter. His other take on flies were, if you can float a cigarette butt right, they'll eat that. So, I think a lot of people get really worked up on it. What you're looking for in a fly is something that's going to float big time, especially because when you're out there at night, you don't know that it's up. So sometimes it does involve going to lighter wire hooks, which are, you run your risk if a fish decides to head to a wood pile, or just really dousing it all the time with floating to make sure it's up there. They'll eat it drown. You just won't pick up on it a lot of times. A lot of times I've seen clients where they go to recast and, the fish was there. Well, their fly was sinking, and that's why we never heard the rise. A couple other things to think about. A lot of times your big crashers on the surface aren't your big fish. 15 to 19 inchers will do that on occasion. A big fish might do it once, and then, kind of like drakes, they'll settle into a spot where they're going to just sip all night. So you got to keep that in mind, just don't chase the biggest rise. Sometimes if you're fishing over some lake run fish, they'll do a little bit more aggressive eats. They're a little dumber. They're used to, chasing minnows, whatever, and not having any pressure. So they get a little stupid. The other thing, I fish parachutes all the way through a spinner fall. I fish spinners all the way through a hatch. Like I said, it shouldn't matter. It's more about presentation. Now, when I'm talking about leader thickness, one thing I will do is I try to keep it 9 feet or 10 feet, because a lot of times you're fishing that weird dead water or something, and you got to get a good drift for them to eat it. A couple things that'll help you with it, and a couple things you can do. The glow-in-the-dark fly lines are kind of nice because a lot of times it'll tell you if you're getting drag. You know, like if you're casting a longer distance and you've got some weird currents, that'll show you what you're dealing with. Typically, if you're stealthy and smart, you know, I mean, you can catch a lot of these fish with 5 to 10 feet of line out. But that comes down to how good are you driving the boat? How did you approach the fish? If you're waiting, how well did you sneak up on them? How did you take your time getting there? You know, and being slow and not causing a commotion. When you do that, you'll find that they're way more susceptible. The other thing which will help you, especially what I found was with fish that are like pin and back eddies, because those back eddies are big collection spots. And those fish will sit in there and just pick one off at a time, pick one off at a time. I've seen huge fish that waited for them to ball up and just sucked a big ball of them down too. Those are damn near impossible to catch, but they're there. So Flashaboo used to make a glow in the dark stuff, and I used to tie those like a parachute, like just keep it real short or just mix some strands in there. It's only going to last a little bit, but it'll give you an idea, you know, what your fly's doing and if your cast is hitting the spot. The other thing is if you have any of the old glow reel lines, you know, save your old ones because that back part of your line hardly gets used, and you can add some of this in, you know, just as a parachute or something as well. Lay it across the back of the fly. I mean, there's all sorts of options. And that does help a lot, you know, especially for those back eddy fish. I don't, you know, if you look at my stuff, I don't really fish that anymore. Whatever, and feel like I can handle it without that. One thing I will also say, so we just had a full moon. So you're going to be going into the new moon for a lot of this. The new moon is easier to fish, kind of. I mean, obviously you can't see anything, but those fish aren't as skittish as they will be on a full moon with that darkness. If you're fishing, you know, moon rises and moon sets, like sometimes you have to look for shady corners and stuff like that. The other thing in the bright moon is like I lean way heavy into hen wing spinners versus like a calf tail wing spinner. That calf tail wing will show up pretty good, but it's really seemed like in those full moons or those brighter moons, they don't eat that as well. You want to go as natural as you can. It just, you know, somewhat natural, you know, get it so it doesn't just stand out. But I don't know. That's about it. I mean, it's you can fish till the birds are chirping. You can get out there and fish, you know, the proper spinner fall and get out of there. If you know, a lot of people get really into this and want to stay all night. When I started guiding, it was a lot of, you know, we fished through the spinner fall and left. That was fun because you always got the peak activity, and you know, you're still home by 1:30. You know, as I progressed later into my guiding career, it seemed like it got popular to stay out there as late as you could. It accounts for a few more fish, you know, and it's per hour the activity and productivity goes way down, but you can find some bigger fish late. I don't know. It's an event to behold. It is special and it is very different. It is not that challenging. It is not that hard. It's about when I've always felt like it's kind of when everybody who owns a fly rod, who goes fly fishing for trout once a year, is up there fishing HEX to get a big one. And that's the easiest time of year to do it. I mean, it's, you know, it's the easiest way to catch a big fish. It's well, next to probably mouse, and that's easier because you don't even need a drag-free drift. But it's what it is, and it is an event, and it's something to behold. It's something to check out. The amount of fish and the size of creature that will come to the surface for a mayfly, it's way different than brown drakes and isos. It draws that next level of fish. Every fish is keyed on it, and I've always felt like this is their big binge feeding event before they kind of lay low in the summer. You know, and then as you start getting into late August, early September, as you get your first few cold nights, some big fish start showing up again. You see it, you know, around the new moon night fishing. You'll see it streamer fishing some in the summer where it's like, okay, we gotta go. It's time to feed. But it seems like it's a big, big event where they binge feed and then lay up. The other things you always want to carry with you when you're doing this, like, is some Drake type ISO stuff as well. And what you'll see is a lot of nights, especially if you're in those gravelly sections with limited mud, you'll have more ISOs on the water than HEX sometimes. And they might be picking off every HEX, but sometimes that ISO will fish really well for you in those situations. You know, when there was a little less boat traffic, you could go down and find some fish on ISOs first, and then go down and find your fish on HEX. At this point, it's so busy that you better pick your spot and hold it if you want to find another fish to fish to. But I got some pictures of flies for you. I don't have a quarter, but I have a spool of thread, which is about the size of a nickel or so, quarter. But feel free, leave any questions in the comments, and I'm pretty good at getting back to you. I'm going to show you some of these flies. Old school Michigan stuff, a lot of deer hair body stuff. I do a lot of natural wings just because. And I don't know, man. It's that time of year. If you chase it right, you're on bugs now, and man, the best might be behind you by the 10th of July, but you can still find them. And if you really are after it, then people start jumping to the UP and doing everything. So, I mean, you can make this easily a month deal if you want. So, whatever. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Sorry, I've been kind of slacking on the content. I've actually been very busy, and I'm in the process of throwing together some fishing stuff I just randomly have put together. So, not a lot of trout, a lot of bass, little muskie. Good stuff. So anyway, appreciate it. Thanks for checking it out. So here's some of the HEX patterns. That is a little HEX nymph that is a little tricky to fish. Some of the guys at Gates used to run those. They'd get some glow in the dark pinch on indicator stuff, and they caught some really nice fish fishing it. Just a little bit above the, on the knot above it, and those fish would eat it. When they get on the mud flats, they'll do that. That's a big Quigley's cripple that I have caught some fish on. That one works, floats pretty good. It'll twist everything up to about 1X. I usually carry some sort of Comparadon style done. In different sizes too. A lot of standard parachute stuff. Just, maybe a 6, maybe a 4, maybe an 8, just depending. A lot of times you don't have to get that creative, but it does seem like every once in a while you got to downsize. The first batch of HEX you're going to get are going to be huge. Your second batch is going to be a little smaller. So your limbadas are huge. Your recurvadas are a little smaller. There's some of the foam back HEX spinners, single wing grizzly. I like the tan. You can see that one's been mauled a little bit. That's a tan quad wing. That kind of looks more like a washed out spinner where it been sitting there a minute. Another quad wing that's been absolutely destroyed. Foam back with the hackle underneath. Floats like a cork. One of the older flies, there's another foam backer that's not destroyed. One of the older flies Charlie Weaver introduced me to years and years ago was this calf tail wing, calf tail tail fly. And that has its moments too. The Regan spinner is awesome, size 6. Don't love the hooks he ties them on, but that fly works. Standard calf tail, and then just a bigger quad wing with that foam back. Those things float real nice with that foam and hackle underneath it. Use good quality hackle when you're palmering stuff, and it'll help. When it's dark out there, you got to make sure your bugs are up. But that's basically all I take, I have to tie 1 or 2 new ones just for fun. Oh, there's a Comparadon in there. Russ tied a million years ago. Once again, 1X on those. They'll twist the crap out of everything. So anyway, thanks for checking it out.